Lauren moved slowly down the hallway, balancing a small tray of tea and biscuits in her hands. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan in the living room and the faint sound of Brandon and Haley's voices coming from their bedroom. She smiled a little to herself as she walked. This had been her late husband's favorite ritual. Every night before bed, she liked to make tea for the three of them. It was her way of keeping the house warm and connected, even though life had been difficult lately. But just as she reached their door, she heard Haley's voice, sharp but hushed. "Once she's gone," Haley whispered, "we'll sell everything. The house, the furniture, everything. It's the only way we'll ever get out of this debt." Lauren froze. For a moment she thought maybe she had misheard. Her heart began to pound in her chest, and she stepped closer, almost without meaning to. Brandon's voice came next, tired and heavy. "I know. I just hate waiting. I can't take living like this forever." Lauren felt her fingers go numb. The tray in her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped it. The clinking of the cups was loud enough that she feared they would hear her, but she stood there, frozen, listening. Haley's voice softened but stayed cold. "She's old, Brandon. It can't be much longer. Once it happens, we'll finally be free. We deserve that after everything." Lauren's throat tightened. She felt like she was outside of her own body, listening to strangers. Her son. Her only son. The one she had raised with so much care, through every school project, every scraped knee, every heartbreak. The boy who used to curl up in her lap and say he'd take care of her when she got old. And now, he was waiting for her to be gone. She backed away slowly, her legs stiff, her breath short. She placed the tray down on the small console table in the hallway before she dropped it. Her hands were still shaking. Inside the room, Haley said something else, but Lauren couldn't hear it anymore. The words had already done their damage. She walked back to her room, every step heavy. When she closed the door behind her, the quiet of her bedroom felt unbearable. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. Her tea ritual, the house she loved, the sacrifices she had made so they could live here after their failed business, all of it suddenly felt like a cruel joke. For a long time she sat there without moving. Then, slowly, she reached for the bottom drawer of her bedside table. She pulled out a blue folder marked important documents. Inside was a set of papers she had prepared months ago, her estate plan, drafted with her lawyer but never signed. She had hesitated back then, thinking, maybe I don't need this yet. Maybe my son will do the right thing when the time comes. Now she knew better. Her hands were still trembling as she set the folder on the table. Lauren stood up and went to the window, looking out into the dark garden. The old oak tree stood tall under the moonlight, and she felt her husband's presence there. She remembered how he had planted it with their son when Brandon was 5. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "This house is ours," she whispered. "Yours and mine. It won't be sold like a broken chair." At that moment, she made a decision. She picked up her phone and scrolled to the name Madeline, lawyer. Her finger hovered over the call button for a moment, but then she pressed it. Madeline's calm voice answered almost immediately. "Lauren, are you all right?" Lauren swallowed hard. "We're signing everything tomorrow morning. The trust, the living will, everything. Can you come first thing?" Madeline didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'll arrange everything tonight. We'll make it official tomorrow." When Lauren hung up, she finally let out a long breath. Her chest felt lighter, not happy, but steady. She knew what she had to do now. For the rest of the night, Lauren didn't sleep. She sat at her desk, going through papers, checking every detail twice. Every now and then, she heard laughter from Brandon and Haley's room, and each time it sent a fresh wave of pain through her chest. But she kept working. By the time the first light of dawn crept into her room, the papers were stacked neatly, ready to be signed. Lauren looked around her room, the photos on the wall, the dresser she and her husband had bought together, the old clock ticking softly. "This is still my home," she whispered to herself. And tomorrow morning, she would make sure no one could ever take it away. Lauren sat at her desk with the blue folder open in front of her. The papers inside seemed heavier than they really were. They carried the weight of her whole life, her husband's memory, and her future. The room was dim, lit only by the small lamp on her table. The rest of the house was quiet, except for the faint creaks of the wooden floor as Brandon moved about and the low murmur of Haley's voice. Their words from earlier still echoed in her head like a curse. "Once she's gone, we'll sell everything." She pressed her hands against her face, trying to steady her breathing. She had raised Brandon with love, taught him kindness, and given him everything she could. And yet, his voice tonight had been cold and tired, like her life was nothing more than a waiting game. Lauren turned back to the papers. Madeline, her lawyer, had prepared them months ago when her neighbor convinced her it was wise to plan ahead. Lauren had signed nothing then. She had thought, I trust my son. He would never betray me. Now, with the pain fresh in her chest, she knew why she had to finish what she had started. She picked up the phone again and read the short message Madeline had sent after their call. I'll bring the notary at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Stay calm. We'll finalize everything. Lauren held onto those words like a lifeline. Stay calm. She took a deep breath and began sorting the papers. Her husband Vikram's name was written on several of them, his signature from old property deeds, his handwriting in the margin of one document. The sight of it made her chest ache. Vikram, she whispered, her voice breaking. They are planning to sell the home you built with your own hands. I won't let that happen. She remembered the first day they had entered the house together, carrying bags of groceries and laughing as they unpacked. She remembered the time Brandon had taken his first steps in the living room while Vikram clapped proudly. Every corner of this home held a memory, a piece of her heart. How could her son think of it as nothing but money? The clock ticked past midnight. Lauren felt the weight of the silence pressing down on her. She wanted to cry, but the tears refused to come. Instead, she wrote a short note in her neat handwriting. This house will stand for love, not greed. It will outlive me, and it will not be sold. She tucked the note inside the folder. It wasn't legal, but it was her truth. The night felt endless. She tried lying down on her bed, but her mind would not rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Brandon's words again, spoken with tired impatience. And Haley's voice, sharp and cold, telling him to wait until she was gone. So instead of sleeping, Lauren began to prepare. She laid out the breakfast plates neatly on the dining table, 3 plates and 1 extra for Madeline. She chopped vegetables, boiled potatoes, and soaked rice flakes. She wanted no chaos in the morning, no delay. When she finished, she sat back down at the desk and read through the trust documents again. Each page made her more certain. The house and the small shop lot her husband had once run would be placed in a charitable trust. She would keep the right to live there until her last day, and after she was gone, it would be turned into a women's learning center, a library, classrooms, and a place of hope. It was not revenge. It was her legacy. The night slowly faded into morning. The first streaks of sunlight slipped through the curtains, painting the room in pale gold. Lauren rubbed her tired eyes and stood by the window. Outside, the garden looked peaceful. The oak tree stood tall, its leaves shining faintly in the new light. She whispered to herself, today, everything changes. At 7:45 a.m., Lauren dressed in her simple blue sari and tied her hair back neatly. She wanted to look steady, not broken. At exactly 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. The sound cut through the silence like a sharp bell of fate. Lauren opened the door to find Madeline standing there, holding a leather case. Behind her was a man with glasses, the notary. Madeline gave a warm but firm smile. Good morning, Lauren. Ready? Lauren nodded. Her voice was quiet but certain. Yes. Let's do this. The papers were placed on the dining table, beside the plates of breakfast she had prepared. The pen felt heavy in her hand, but she did not hesitate this time. One by one, she signed every page. The notary stamped them, and Madeline placed them neatly back into her case. When it was done, Lauren let out a slow breath. It felt like a storm had passed, leaving only calm behind. She looked at the clock. It was 8:30 a.m. Brandon and Haley would be coming down soon. They would see Madeline at the table, the papers already signed, and the truth would finally be revealed. Lauren straightened the plates once more and sat at the head of the table. Her heart was still heavy, but her hands no longer trembled. Whatever storm awaited at breakfast, she was ready. The smell of warm potatoes and fresh tea filled the dining room. Sunlight slipped through the curtains and made quiet patterns on the wooden floor. Lauren placed the last cup on the table and sat at the head, her back straight, her hands calm. The blue folder was no longer there. The papers were signed and safely in Madeline's case. The clock reached 8:35. Footsteps on the stairs. Brandon and Haley came down together, sleepy and careless. Haley pushed a strand of hair behind her ear and glanced at the extra chair. Brandon frowned when he saw Madeline and the man with glasses. Mom, Brandon asked. What is this? Lauren gestured toward the chairs. Sit. Eat. We have something important to discuss. Madeline stood up politely. Good morning. I'm Madeline, Lauren's lawyer. This is Mr. Singh, the notary. She nodded once, firm but kind. We've taken care of a few legal matters this morning. Haley's eyes tightened. Legal matters? Without telling us. Lauren poured tea with a steady hand. You will hear everything now. For a moment, only the clink of spoons and the soft hum of the fan filled the room. Then Madeline opened her case and took out a thin stack of documents. She did not push them forward yet. She spoke slowly, like each word needed space to land. This property, including the house and the old shop lot, has been transferred into a legal trust, she said. It is called the Vikram and Lauren Learning Trust. Lauren retains the right to live here for the rest of her life. No one may force her to leave, and no one may sell, mortgage, or transfer the property while she is alive. After her lifetime, the property will support a small women's learning center and library. The room changed. It was as if the air itself had turned heavier. Brandon's mouth opened and then closed again. Haley sat very still, her spoon hovering over her plate. Madeline continued in the same calm tone. There is also a no-contest clause. If anyone pressures Lauren about the property or tries to challenge this trust in court, they lose all gifts that have been set aside for them. The clause is lawful and enforceable. Haley found her voice first. Wait, this is ridiculous. How could you do this without talking to us? Lauren looked at her, then at Brandon. Her eyes were soft but unflinching. I listened to you last night. You talked without me. This morning, I spoke for myself. Brandon's face flushed. Mom, that wasn't. We were just frustrated. Lauren raised a hand, small and quiet, and he stopped. I know what I heard. I heard my son say he hates waiting. I heard my daughter-in-law say that once I am gone, you will sell everything. She took a breath. I do not want a war. I want peace. So I made a plan that gives us peace. Madeline slid a sealed envelope across the table. Brandon stared at it like it might burn him. What is this? A small support package, Madeline said. 2 years of modest rent help and a contribution toward debt repayment. It is conditional. You must attend financial counseling and maintain employment. More importantly, you must treat Lauren with respect, and you must not pressure her about the house. Any violation ends the support. Haley let out a short, hard laugh. So you're bribing us to be nice? Madeline's voice didn't change. No. We are putting clear boundaries so everyone knows what happens next. Lauren set her cup down. The tiny sound was enough to pull every eye back to her. I cannot control what you feel, she said. You might be angry. You might be ashamed. But this house is not a number in your plan. It is my life. Your father and I built it. We planted the oak tree together. We raised you here. When I go, it will teach other people. Until then, it will keep me safe. Brandon rubbed his forehead. His hand shook. Mom, we didn't mean, we're drowning. You know the loans. You know the business failed. I know, Lauren said softly. That is why I offered help. Honest help. Not help that arrives by waiting for me to disappear. Haley's eyes shone with heat. So we get nothing of the house. Nothing after everything we did here. Not of the house, Lauren said. You will get a chance. A chance to begin again with dignity, if you choose it. Silence spread like a sheet over the table. Outside, a scooter went by. Somewhere a neighbor's radio played an old song. The morning kept moving, even while they sat so still. Brandon spoke at last, his voice low. You heard us. I can't take that back. He swallowed hard. I am ashamed. Haley glanced at him, surprised by the softness in his voice. She looked back at Lauren, her tone smaller now. We were scared. I said awful things. I was thinking about numbers, not people. She stared down at her plate. I shouldn't have. Lauren nodded once. Not forgiving yet, not punishing either. Simply acknowledging the truth. Fear makes sharp words, she said. But words still cut. Madeline gathered the signed copies and gave Lauren one. I've filed the notice. Any attempt to list or pledge the property will be blocked. If either of you has questions, ask now. I prefer clarity to anger. Brandon made a small sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. What questions can I ask? You brought a pen to a fire and put it out. He turned to his mother. What do you want us to do? First, Lauren said, eat breakfast. She paused, a faint, tired smile touching her mouth. Then we will talk like adults. You may stay here for 60 days while you look for a place. I will pay for one session of counseling with you, so I hear your plan. If you accept the conditions, Madeline will release the first part of the support. Haley folded her arms. And if we don't accept? Then you are still welcome to stay for 60 days, Lauren said. But there will be no money. And there will be no more cruel conversations in my house. Madeline added, there is also a protection clause. Harassment or threats will result in a restraining order. Let's not go there. No one spoke for a long time. The fan kept turning. The food grew cooler. A bird landed on the window grill and flicked its tail as if impatient for an answer. Brandon reached for the envelope. He didn't open it. He just held it between both hands, like something fragile. I'll go to counseling, he said. We'll figure this out. I'm sorry, Mom. Haley looked from him to Lauren, then back again. She pressed her lips together and nodded. I'm sorry too. Lauren's shoulders dropped slightly, as if some heavy strap had slid away. She wasn't happy. Not yet. But the air felt less sharp. Then we will try, she said. Not to pretend nothing happened. To repair what can be repaired. Madeline stood, gathering her case. I'll leave you to your breakfast. I'll return in 2 days with the counseling details. She turned to Lauren. Call me if you need anything. Lauren walked her to the door. At the threshold, Madeline squeezed her hand once, firm and steady. You did the hard thing, she said. Now let time do the rest. When Lauren returned to the table, Brandon had already served tea into 3 cups. He slid one toward her without looking up. Careful, he murmured. It's hot. She took the cup and watched steam curl into the light. The house felt different, as if it had closed a wound and begun to knit. They ate in small, quiet bites. No one tried to fill the silence with easy jokes. It was not the old warmth, but it was not the cold of last night either. It was a new air, thin but breathable. After breakfast, Brandon carried the plates to the sink. Haley wiped the table with slow, careful strokes. Lauren stood by the window and looked at the oak tree. Its leaves shook in the breeze. The garden looked the same, but she knew better. A line had been drawn. A path had been chosen. Behind her, Haley cleared her throat. We'll start looking for places today, she said. Anne, we'll go to the session. We should learn what we didn't know. Lauren turned. Her eyes were tired but kind. Good. Brandon nodded, the envelope still in his hand. Thank you for not throwing us out, he said. I don't deserve it. Lauren's answer was simple. Maybe not, but I deserve peace. The clock ticked toward 9. The day had begun. Nothing in the room had changed, and yet everything had. The house was no longer a thing that could be sold. It was a promise kept. It would hold its owner now. And one day, it would hold books and voices and women learning new skills, just as Lauren had planned with Vikram's memory in her heart. For now, it held 3 people trying to find their way back to each other, step by careful step, in the ordinary light of morning. The next weeks were slow and careful. Brandon and Haley kept their words. They went to counseling, brought their debt papers, and faced the numbers they had tried to escape. Brandon found a steady job at a warehouse. It did not pay much, but the pay came on time, and that felt new. Haley picked up more online work and stopped checking house prices on her phone. Their voices grew softer at home. They did not avoid Lauren, but they did not crowd her either. They learned to knock before entering her room. They asked, not demanded. On Sundays, Brandon began helping in the old shop lot behind the house. Lauren had decided to clean it and turn it into the first classroom. He washed the floor, repaired the loose shelf, and changed 2 broken bulbs. He did not talk much while he worked. He simply worked. Sometimes he looked at the old photos on the wall, his father with a paintbrush, his mother at the counter, and he wiped his eyes when no one was watching. By the end of the 2nd month, boxes of books began to arrive. Neighbors donated sewing machines. Madeline helped draft a simple flyer, Women's Learning, Reading, Sewing, and Small Business Basics. Free. A small grant from a local group came through. The trust paid for paint, chairs, and a lock for the door. Lauren kept the receipts in a neat file. She liked the order of it. The 60 days went by. Brandon and Haley found a small rental apartment not far away. On the last evening, they stood with their bags in the doorway, unsure how to say goodbye. Lauren did not make a long speech. She hugged them both, a gentle, steady hug that said, "Do better and keep going." Haley whispered, "Thank you." Brandon said, "We'll come on Saturday to finish the shelves." Lauren nodded. "I will make tea." They did come on Saturday, and the next one, and the one after that. The classroom found its shape. White paint dried on the walls like quiet snow. 6 sewing machines waited in a line like patient animals. The bookcase filled with donated novels, grammar guides, and a few cookbooks because someone asked for them. A little bell on the door rang when the wind pushed it, and the sound made the place feel alive. The opening day came on a bright morning. A few women from the neighborhood gathered with their daughters. A teacher from the school brought a stack of notebooks and a shy smile. Madeline came too, in a simple dress, carrying a small potted plant. Brandon and Haley stood at the back, hands linked, like children afraid to breathe too loudly. Lauren wore a light blue sari and her wedding bangles. She looked at the faces in the room and then at the door that led to the yard where the oak tree stood. She felt her husband's memory like a hand on her shoulder. She took a breath and began. "Welcome," she said. "This place is small, but it has a big heart. My husband, Vikram, used to say a house should do more than keep out the rain. It should let in light. Today, we open the windows." There was a soft laugh in the room. Someone clapped. Lauren held up a yellowed envelope then, one she had found at the back of a drawer while cleaning. It had been sealed for years. On the front, in Vikram's handwriting, were the words, "For Brandon, when he is ready." Brandon stared, shocked. "What is that?" "I found it last week," Lauren said. "I think your father left it long ago and forgot to give it to you. I did not read it until last night." She opened the envelope carefully and took out the letter. "I will read only a few lines." Her voice was steady, but everyone could hear the weight of the words. "My son, one day you will be a man who must choose between easy money and honest work. If I am not there, let this be my voice. A house is not a prize, it is a promise. If you ever feel lost, find something useful to build. Be a pillar, not a buyer." Lauren folded the letter and looked up. Brandon's face had gone pale, then red. Tears stood in his eyes. He pressed his lips together and nodded again and again, as if agreeing with a man he could not see. "That is the kind of place this will be," Lauren said. "Not a prize. A promise." She turned to the women. "We will learn reading in the mornings and sewing in the afternoons. If any of you wish to start small work from home, we will help with simple business steps. You do not need to be rich to begin. You need to be brave and patient. We have a kettle for tea, and we have time." The bell on the door rang as a late guest came in, laughing an apology. The room felt warm and bright. Someone handed out notebooks. The girls giggled and shushed one another. The sewing machines clicked softly as Lauren tested the pedals. Madeline stepped forward with the plant. "For the windowsill," she said. "New roots in a new place." After the small ribbon was cut, a thin red string tied across the doorway, Lauren called Brandon and Haley to the front. "I have something more to say," she told them. "It is not about property. It is about work." They looked worried. She smiled a little. "The trust allows me to hire help for the center," she said. 2 part-time coordinators, if the budget permits. If you volunteer for 6 months, finish counseling, and keep steady jobs, I will offer both of you those paid roles for 1 year, small pay, honest hours. If you accept, you will be helpers, not owners. If you prove faithful, the trustees will decide later if the contract should continue. This is not charity. It is a chance to be useful." Haley's hand flew to her mouth. Brandon blinked hard. "Why us?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "Because your father wanted you to build," Lauren said. "Because I want to believe you can." They did not hug. They were still learning how to stand close again. But Haley nodded with real humility, and Brandon bowed his head like a promise. Around them, the room began to move. Chairs pulled into a circle, pencils passed around, a machine tested with a line of thread that shone in the sun. The first reading lesson started with simple words on a whiteboard. Home. Work. Promise. A woman who had never read in front of others tried the word home and got it right. The room clapped. A girl rolled the red ribbon into her pocket as a charm. Tea steamed on the side table, and the bell kept ringing whenever someone new came in. Later, when the lessons were done and the room grew quiet again, Lauren stepped outside to the oak tree. The leaves made soft shadows on the ground. Brandon joined her, standing at a little distance. "I'll be back tomorrow to fix the window latch," he said. Then, after a pause, I read the letter. "I will try to be the man he wanted." "I know," Lauren said. She touched the tree's rough back. "Try every day. That is all any of us can do." As the sun slid lower, the house looked exactly the same as before. Same walls, same roof, same garden. But it was not the same. It had chosen its meaning. It would not be sold like a number on a page. It would hold books, tools, and voices. It would hold a mother's peace and a son's second chance. When Lauren went back inside, the little plant from Madeline was already on the sill, catching the light. She set the kettle on for one last cup of tea and listened to the quiet. It was not empty. It was full, like a breath held and then let go. The promise had been kept. And now, day by day, it would keep on giving. You said,